Alright guys, so today we are going to be going through how to solve systems of equations using substitution in which the equations require manipulation. Now what I mean by that is this. Previously what you've seen were reasonably simple ones where it would say something like y equals 3x and then, I don't know, 2x plus y equals 25. And what you would do is you would say, well, if I know what y equals, and that is 3x, then I can substitute 3x in for y. So I'm going to get 2x plus 3x equals 25. And then you would simply go through and solve from there. Today, we're going to be doing something slightly different. Today, we are going to be working on this key order, and this is what you need to make sure your students understand, is in order to substitute, the first thing you do is you need to isolate one variable. Now, it doesn't matter which one you want to isolate, but you need to find a variable which you can isolate. And by isolate, I mean in one of the equations, we need to get one equation, or one variable, I'm sorry, by itself on its own side of the equal sign. So let's look here. So we have x plus 4y equals 2 and x plus 4y equals 10. Now, immediately, if you remember from Friday, we can solve this using inspection, which allows us to see that this doesn't equal anything. There's no solution to this, but let's go in and verify that. So I get x plus 4y equals 2. I'm going to focus on this equation because it seems simpler. Now, you could use either equation, but in this case, I'm going to use the easier one. So I'm going to say, well, x plus 4y equals 2. I'm going to isolate x. It looks easier to isolate here because there is no coefficient. If there's no coefficient, I don't have to divide by anything, so I'm not going to. I'm going to say minus 4y minus 4y. And I get x equals 2 minus 4y. I now know what x equals, and if I know what x equals, I can plug that in here and determine, let me clear some space here, I can determine what that means. If x equals 2 minus 4y, then 2 minus 4y plus 4y equals 10, and well, negative 4y plus 4y equals nothing, so 2 equals 10. No, it does not, so no solution. Now, that was combining a number of different things that you've seen so far. What we're going to do is take your students through the do now, make sure that they've figured out there's no solution, and in this case, they should realize there are infinite solutions, and if you don't immediately see that, hopefully you see that this is double this, this is double this, and the result, the constant over here, is double the constant in the second equation. So what you end up with is a no solution for A and an infinite solution for B. But that is not what we're looking at today. What we're going to be doing is, please come down to the independent investigation. This first equation should be reasonably easy, and I want you to make sure that your students recognize this point. X is already solved for. We already have x isolated. X is equal to 2y minus 4. So what you're going to do is come over here and say, well, if x is 2y minus 4, then x plus 8y is really 2y minus 4 plus 8y. Because as we see here, x plus 8y equals 16. Well, I don't want x. The idea here is I can't solve if I have two variables. I need to eliminate one of them by using substitution. So all that equals 16. Now as I carry that through, I say, okay, well, 2y plus 8y gives me 10y minus 4 equals 16. Plus 4y, you end up finding out Hopefully you see this, but just to make sure, I would add 4y, add 4y, and I end up with 10y equals 20, therefore y is 2. And if I know that y is 2, you don't need to worry about erasing this, but I want you to see this. If I know that y is 2, I know that in my end result y is 2, then x is equal to 2y, so 2 times 2 minus 4. 2 times 2 minus 4 is 4 minus 4, which is 0. Now, that's substitution as we've previously seen it. That's a simpler version of substitution. Now, substitution can also be used Substitution can also be used when we don't have an isolated variable. And I'm going to show you what that looks like right here. Now, I look at both of these equations and realize in neither equation do I have an isolated variable. And by that I mean in no equation in problem 2 do I have one variable on one side of the equal sign and nothing with it. There's no isolated variable in problem 2. So I need to isolate a variable. Now I have two options. I can isolate x or I can isolate y. And I could do it with the top equation or the bottom equation. Really, I have a lot of options. Here's what you need to make sure your students notice. Find the easiest thing to isolate. If I isolate x, I'm going to need to divide by -2 or by 3. I don't want to divide. I want to make this as easy as possible. I see that this y here has no coefficient. It's already by itself with a coefficient of 1. So that's going to be the easiest one to solve for. So this really can be solved by adding 2x to both sides. So I get y equals 2x plus 8. If I know that y equals 2x plus 8, I take this and I plug it in here. So I would get 2 times 2x plus 8. So really I'd get 3x plus 2x plus 8 equals 9. And then I would just simply solve this through. 2 times 2 would give me 4x. 2 times 8 is 16. So I'd get 3x plus 4x plus 16 equals 9. And then I would continue through and solve for that. And I'm going to give you a moment to do that on your own. Once you are done, start the video again. All right, just in case you had any trouble with that, we would have 3x plus 4x gives me 7x plus 16 equals 9. I subtract 16 from both sides, and I would get 7x equals -7, and therefore x equals -1. I can then take this and plug it back into either one of these equations in order to solve for y. The thing to stress to your students is if they do not have an x and a y, present these as just zeros here. If they do not have an x comma y written as a coordinate, they will not receive credit. They need to solve this as a coordinate. There we go. Now, for the stop and jot, explain how the process used to substitute differs when solving the two equations above. Well, the process differs in that the second equation requires manipulation. Manipulation means changing. Manipulation in order to solve, in order to substitute. We'll go with that. In order to substitute. Now, you're going to take your students through the guided investigation down here. If you're confused about which one to use, please note, usually try to aim for something, isolating something that does not have a coefficient next to it. Don't try to isolate if there's a coefficient unless you have to. So I'm going to let you go through these. With your students, you're going to go through the guided investigation and as much of the partner practice as you can. Do not do the independent practice. Please. Oh, dropped my pen. Please do not do the independent practice with your students. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out, post on the Google Classroom if you need to, and best of luck.